Hi, I'm Cameron McKennis, animator and brand manager at the Jamaica Animation Nation Network. And in this video, I'll be showing you how to create an advanced rig for a 2D character using the Toon Boom software. This is a video that is crucial for the field of digital animation, so please pay close attention. At the end of this instructional video, you should be able to trace sketches, create layers, create a head rig, create a full body rig, create a rigging template, store rigs in the library, and identify rigging limitations. The employability skills being highlighted in this video are thinking critically, using technology, solving problems, working efficiently, paying attention to details, and planning and organizing activities. Let's discuss how to plan for 2D rigging. The first thing you need to do is identify how complex the rig needs to be based on the script given. The next step is to identify how a character can be simplified using basic shapes. This is important because the more complex the character is, the more difficult it is to animate. The next step is to construct the rigging map based on the character sketch. Then you'll have to understand how layers are controlled using pegs. Lastly, we'll deal with how to import and section the character for rigging. Let's get into it. Let's import an image. Go to File, Import, Images, click on Browse, then locate the image on your computer, select the image, click Open, and then select OK. Here we have the character's head, which is essentially a huge circle. I'll just go ahead and write head, so that's one shape. And for the outer rim of his eyes, those are essentially circles as well. So we have two more circles. Eyes, outer. And for his pupils, those are circles as well. So this is pupil. And we'll call this pupil right. Pupil dot R to indicate that it is right pupil. And pupil dot L to indicate that this is the left pupil. Now for his nose, that's just two lines, so we can just draw those shapes right there. So here we have his nose, and his mouth is just a line that is curved. His eyebrows are rectangles. Okay, and his ears are, well, they're like semicircles. Ear dot L for left. This one will be ear dot R for right. The top of his head, we can just draw the shape here. And this would be part of his head. So this would be a part of the circle. He doesn't have a neck, so I'm going to give him a neck. So this is another shape here. And for his body, I'm going to separate his body into two parts. The upper part of his body and the lower part of his body. So we have two shapes. Lower body and upper body. And for his arm, we'll be breaking that into the three shapes. So here we have the upper part of his arm. That's one shape. And this is his right arm, so we'll call that dot R to indicate that it's his right arm. Here we have the lower part, which is essentially another rectangle. And this entire hand would be one shape, hand. Dot R. And we don't have to do the shape for the hand over here, because we'll just use this and duplicate it to match over here. And of course there's is leg. We break it apart the same way that we did the and. So we'll have the upper leg dot R, lower leg dot R, and we have right foot. If we should add this all up, we have, let's see, about 19 shapes already. And that's not including the shape for this and here and this leg here. That's pretty much how you'd go about breaking apart the character into basic shapes. Now discuss the limitations of the rig. First off, what will they be using the rig for, right? Based on the script, will the audience be seeing the character from the front, the right side, the left side, wherever, right? So think about all those things. Now with this character, for example, as we can see, he's only facing towards the front. So you can't have this character do a full 360-degree turn or do certain complicated actions that a normal human would do. If you wanted to do those complicated movements, you'd have to create more than one drawing. So you'd have to have the character facing towards the front, the back, you know, to the side, etc. After you've discussed it, you create the rigging map to know which part connects to which piece on the character. So this right here is essentially a rigging map. So each part of the character that I labeled will be essentially a separate layer for that character. So the only part that I did not do is this half of the body right here. Let me just go and do that right now so it can be clear. Here we have the upper left arm, so I'm going to call it upper arm dot left. We'll have the lower part of the arm, which I'll call lower arm, and of course we'll have the and. Okay, and we'll essentially do the same thing with the legs here, and of course the left foot. Now you can label these parts whatever you wish, but it would make sense to call them what they actually are. This is essentially your rigging map, and we'll be putting each and every one of these pieces on separate layers. It's important to rig the character's head, right, in order to animate the character's head. If you don't rig it, you can't animate it. When rigging a character's head, you'll need to understand parenting when rigging, create layers and altering their properties, inking a character's head using different layers, creating pegs for each of those layers, and combining each layer using the pegs. So to create a new layer, you would click on the plus sign right here and click on drawing. Then you'll be able to rename your drawing whatever you wish. So you could call this head and click add and close. The next step is to select one of your drawing tools to go ahead and trace the character. So here we have the brush tool that you can draw. We also have tools hidden under this tool right here, which is the square tool. So if you left click and hold your mouse button down, you'll see a list of other shapes. And one of the best tools to trace your character with is the polyline tool. So if you click on the polyline tool, you will be able to left click anywhere to create your points. You can also left click and hold down your mouse button, then drag to create a nice little curve. Like so. Then release and you'll have your curve. To discontinue the line, because as you can see, the line continues on and on. To discontinue this line, you just simply press the red dot right there, and then it will break the line and you can continue anywhere else on the screen. Like so. Okay, so let's get right into creating the character's head. And of course, I'm undoing this by pressing Ctrl and Z. So the first thing I want is to create the head shape of the character, which is a circle. And if we look back on our rigging map, we can see that we have a head, which is essentially, you know, a circle. Let me just go with this tool right here called the ellipse tool, and I'll just left click and drag, and there I have my circle. So that is my character's head. So essentially we want to put each part of the character on different layers. So the next step is I'll go to creating the character's eyes. So click the plus sign, then click drawing, and then I call this outer underscore eye dot, and I'm going to do the right one first. So I'm going to type R and press add and close, and I'll use an ellipse tool. I'll use the same ellipse tool to create my circle. There we have it. And so that's one of the eyes. And instead of actually creating a new layer and then, you know, doing the same drawing over here, we can actually duplicate this layer. So if I right click and look for duplicate, so duplicate selected layers, it automatically creates a new layer with the same shape. So let me just rename this by left clicking, double clicking inside the layer name, and I'm just going to change this to L to represent the left outer eye, and I'm going to use my select tool, which is this tool right here, to left click on the circle and then just use my mouse to move it over. And notice how each layer, when they're not activated, they go pale. So this is a way to show us which layer that we're currently on. So we are currently on this layer because, as you can see, this circle is much brighter than this circle, or the circle on the head. So let's keep going. So I'm just going to create another layer for the nose, N-O-S-E, and I'm going to use the line tool. Just draw a line like so, and draw another line like so. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. Then I'm going to create another layer for the mouth, add and close. I'm going to use my polyline tool this time so I can get that nice curve. So I left click and then left click at the end and drag and release, and there I have my nice curve. And then I'll just left click on that red dot right there to break the line. So the next step is the ear. So I'm going to call this ear.r, add and close, and I'm going to use my polyline tool again and just create a nice ellipse like so. Okay, let me undo that. That didn't go so great. So one point right there, left click, drag, and release. Okay, and of course we're just going to duplicate this. So right click, duplicate selected layers, and then rename this to ear.l, and use our select tool to move it over. Now as you can see, it's turned to the up. Now as you can see, it's turned in the opposite direction, so we'll have to flip it. So if we go to our tools properties over here, we can look for the operation symbol, and we have two symbols right here. One allows you to flip horizontally and one allows you to flip vertically. Now click on the one that says flip horizontal and it will flip. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is create our pupils. So I'm going to create a new layer, call this pupil.l, And I'm going to use my ellipse tool again, create a circle, and to save time, I'm just going to duplicate this, call it pupil.right, and use my select tool and move it over. Now, the next step is to create the eyebrows. So create a new layer, EYE BROW eyebrow.L, I'll enclose. I'm going to use a rectangle for the eyebrows. So here we have one eyebrow, and I'm just going to duplicate this again. Rename and move it over. And of course, remember I said in a previous video that I would just put the hair on top of the head. So let's go back to the head layer and just draw this right here. So I'm going to use the polyline tool and just create that nice curve like so. And let me undo that one and left click and drag, and there we have it. So here we have all parts of the head on separate layers. Create pegs to connect each of the parts together so that they can function as one unit. So as we can see, we have many different layers here, and a peg controls other layers. Now, the first thing that we'll do is go to what is called the node view or the network view. Depending on which version of ToolMove you are using, it is called the network view, while in earlier versions, actually, it's called the network view, and in later versions, it's called the node view. I'm using one of the later versions, so it's called the node view. And to go to that particular view, we'd go to Windows and click on Node View or Network View. Depending on your version, it could say Network View, but they are the same thing, so don't worry about it. If you look over here, as you can see, I already have my node view over here, and these are my nodes right here. So each of these rectangular boxes represent my layers over here. And as you can see, when I click on them, it's highlighted here as well. So these are basically the layers behind the scenes. So this over here is what we'll use to actually rig the head. Let's go ahead and get started with the rig. So the first step is to create a peg for each of these layers. With my layer selected, I'm going to add a peg. I can do this one of two ways. I can come over into my layers panel and click this button right here, and as we can see, it adds a peg. It's represented by this new layer that is created, and notice it's different from the drawing layer. The drawing layer has some shapes to the left of it, and the peg has like a curve to the left of it, and also it has this drop down box. So essentially what just happened is that this now has become, the peg has now become a parent of the layer that I have selected. So if I should move the peg, it would automatically move the layer. So let me demonstrate that right now. So if I should click on this, which is the peg, and move, we notice that the drawing also moves. So let me Control Z and undo that. You can hide the layer within the peg by clicking the drop down arrow. And that's how you would create a peg. You can also, let me undo, you could also right click on the layer and go to Insert, then go to Move and click on Peg. Then it would create a peg, and then you would have to automatically connect the drawing to the peg by left clicking the top and drag up into the peg like so. But I find that the easiest way is to select the the drawing and click the shortcut button right here. So the cool thing is that I can select all of my layers and create pegs for them simultaneously. So if I zoom out here and just left click and drag over all my layers like so, or you could select the top layer and then scroll all the way down to the last layer, which is the head layer. This layer we aren't using, and hold down shift and left click. It would select all the layers that way. And then I would just go over here and press the button, the peg button, which is this. And as we can see, it automatically creates a peg for each of those joints. Now over here in the network view or the node view, we can see that it created the pegs, but they are all messy. So a quick way to tidy this up is to select everything, both the pegs and the drawings, and then click this box right here where we have about 3 white boxes. Click that and then click on OK. And it basically organizes your layers and your pegs for you. Now the next thing to do is we have to go ahead and set pivot points for the pegs. So remember how we had to set pivot points for the drawings? When you create pegs, they also have their own pivot points. And in order to move the drawings, we need to make sure that the pivot point is close to or in exactly the same area as the drawing. But a really quick way to do this, we can actually apply the drawing layer's pivot point position onto the peg. So to do this, we click on the drawing and then click this yellow square to the left, which is the properties of the drawing layer. Then here we are in the properties. If we click on the transformation tab and go all the way down to drawing pivot, we see here it says apply embedded pivot on drawing layer. I'm just going to click on that drop down list and I'm going to choose the one in the middle that says apply embedded pivot on parent peg. Now what that does, it actually copies the pivot point from the drawing onto the peg. So we can see it identified over here. So we'll have to do this for each and every one of these pegs. So if I should click on this, notice this is where the pivot point is for the drawing, and if I should click on the peg, the pivot point is right here. So yeah, so for each peg we'll have to go and copy the pivot point position. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. So click this layer, go to its properties, make sure I'm in the transformation tab, and select apply embedded pivot on parent peg, close, move on to the next. One thing to note is that you can only copy the pivot point's position onto one peg above. So let's say I add another peg somewhere here. I could not apply the pivot point's location to that peg, nor could I copy this peg's pivot point position onto that peg. So it only goes one peg up. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And I'm almost done here. Now you could also manually go ahead and move the pivot points for the pegs, but you might not get it completely accurate, but that's still one way to do it. But I recommend doing it this way by copying the pivot points position. Okay, so now that all my pivots are set for both my drawings and my pegs, it's time to actually connect each part of the head. Okay, so a good way to look at this is how your body is connected to each other. Well, that's one way to look at it. So what we'll do is group each related layer to each other, and then basically work our way up the hierarchy. So for example, we have two pupils, we can connect those together. We have two parts of the outer eye, we can connect those together and then connect it to the pupil, etc. But a quick way to actually connect each part to the head is by finding the head layer, the head peg layer, or the head peg rather. Let me just move this up, and then what we could do is just select the top part of each peg and just connect it to the head layer like so. So I'm just going to do that and show you what it looks like. And finally the eyebrow. Okay, so with each part connected, if I should select the head peg, we notice that the entire head gets selected. So right now we can actually move the entire head in its entirety. So that's one way. But the problem with this is, let's say we wanted to move only the parts of the face, for example, from the mouth all the way up to the eyebrow. There are no pegs connected to each other in that way, so we couldn't move those together. Okay, so the best way to do this is to connect each layer together that you would more than likely move together as a group, and then connect it to the head. So let me just undo each of this, and we will connect each piece by piece. So let me just start with the eyebrow. So we have two eyebrows. What I can do is connect one to the other. So I can connect this eyebrow to this eyebrow. So we see that the two eyebrows get highlighted. Or I could do it the other way around by connecting this one to this one. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so two eyebrows connected to each other. I'm going to connect the two pupils to each other. I'm going to do the same thing for the ears and the outer part of the eyes. Now, the outer part of the eyes are related to the pupils. Make sense? Because the pupils are inside of the outer rings. Okay, so I'm going to connect the pupils to the outer part of the eye. So let me just bring this up where we can see it and move the pupils up, and then I'm going to connect the pupil to the outer part of the eye. Okay, now this makes sense rather than connecting the outer part of the eye to the pupil. Why? Let's say we wanted to move this pupil by itself. This pupil now controls the entire outer ring for both eyes. So when you want to move this pupil by itself, you wouldn't be able to move that, as we can see here. So you have to do a bit of thinking or planning before you actually go and connect your pieces together. So it would make more sense to connect the pupil into the outer part of the eye. So the outer parts we can use to control the entire eyes, and also I can move my pupils together. Now again, if you wanted to move each pupil independently, right, you would have to connect this a different way. So right now we see where this pupil is connected to this pupil. So this pupil is the parent of this. So whenever I move this peg, it will move both pupils. But if I wanted to move them independently, I would have to separate those two and then connect them independently to the other part of the eye. So now I'm able to select this one separately and this one separately. And as a matter of fact, I think I might do that, or I'll go back to, for the purposes of this rig, I'll go back to connecting the both people together. But just keep that in mind that you can do it that way, depending on what you are looking for. Okay, so that is connected to the outer eye. Let me move on. So I'm going to connect the mouth to the nose and then connect it up to the eyes right here. So nose to mouth, and keep in mind that these parts won't be moving independently. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you connect them to each other. So mouth to, okay, I'm going to connect these two to this right here. So this now controls the entire face. So let's say I wanted to move this face, I would be able to move this like so. Okay, for whatever reason. Okay, and I missed the eyebrows, so I'm just going to connect the eyebrows as well to this piece right here. So now they can all move together like so. And next, I'm going to move on to the outer part of the head and I'm going to connect the ears to the head so they can move together as one. And then of course I'm going to connect the entire face to the head. So I'm going to have the head being the master parent, or the parent above all parents, to control everything. So like so. So now I'm able to control the head like so, and also I have the face, and I'm able to animate the face or move the face by itself. Okay, now we can come over here to our layers, and if we, because the head is now controlling every single layer or every single peg, once we click on this arrow right here, every single other layer will be hidden inside this one peg. So you get a bit more space over here, and that's pretty cool. And that's pretty much it for rigging the head. The next step is creating a full body rig using the network view. Right, the network view is basically an alternate way of rigging the character. So let's say, for example, you're drawing an arm. You would rename that layer arm, and then it would be represented inside the network view right away. So each time you create a layer, it would be, you would see it inside the network view as you create it. So I'm going to turn on my sketch layer so we can see the body. And I'm just going to create a new layer and call it, so I'm going to create a layer for the upper part of the body. So I'm going to call this upper body. Press add and close. And then I'm going to use my polyline tool. And remember, you can use any drawing tool that you wish or that you're comfortable with. So I'm just going to use this tool and draw the character's upper part of his body. Like so. Like so. Okay, so that's done. And the reason why we can't see the lines is because my upper body layer is actually beneath my sketch layer. So if I just left click this and drag, now we are able to see. Okay, so that's done with. So I'm going to create another layer and call it lower body. Add and close. And notice that I'm not worrying about making this perfect. This video is just about teaching you how to rig. Okay, so I'm not worrying about colors or if my lines are straight or what. I'm just worrying more about how the rig will function at the end of the day. So So yeah, so I have my lower body layer, and I'm just going to create the lower part of the body there. Okay, it's beneath that layer again. Let me bring it up above so I can see. I'm going to go like so. Wait, let me curve that line. And close this line. And there we have the lower part of the character's body. Okay, and I'm just going to go right ahead and set the keyframes right now, and set the pivot points right now, sorry. So on my upper body, I'm going to bring this above the lower body, because you know it's above the lower body because it's upper. And I'm going to click on my pivot tool, and I'm going to position the pivot somewhere around here. And for the lower part of the body, I'm going to position it around here. And the reason why I'm not putting this in the center is that I want this part of the body to move the entire body. So when it moves, it would rotate around this point, which would make it go in this direction. Okay, but the upper part of the body, of course, I would want that to be able to rotate around the lower part, like so. Okay, and don't worry about where the pivot point is located now, if it's completely accurate, because you can always go back and alter it later. Okay, so let's move on. So we have upper, lower. I'm going to put my head layer above those, and I'm going to continue. So I'm going to create a new layer, drawing, and I think I'm going to work on the leg. So upper leg dot right, so dot R for right. Select my polyline tool, and I'm going to stop it where his knee would stop, so it's somewhere about here. And I'm going to go here. Okay, so I'm seeing it. That's good. And just put a semicircle where his knee would go. Okay, so we'll create a new layer again. Call this lower leg dot R, and I'll go ahead and draw the lower part of the leg like so. Okay, can't see again. Okay, so now it's above, so I'm going to connect these points here. There we have our leg. And of course, again, I'm going to go and set my pivot points. So for the upper part of the leg, I'm going to set the pivot point to somewhere about here. And for the lower part, I'm going to set it where the character's knee would be, which would be somewhere about around here. So it would rotate around that point to give it the illusion that this is the character's knee. Okay, so the next thing is shoe. So I'm just going to create a drawing, shoe, name it shoe dot R for right, and I'm just going to draw his shoe real quick, like so. And again, it's below the layer, so I'm going to bring it above. And there we have his shoe, his right shoe. Okay, and I'm going to set the pivot point for the shoe to about here. Okay, all right, so we're done with the right leg. Now I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate these parts. So for the upper right leg, I'm going to duplicate selected, and I'm just going to call this one, I'm going to rename, so let me double click and call this upper leg dot L for left. I'm going to move it down, and I'm going to duplicate the lower leg, the lower right leg, and I'm going to call this lower right leg dot L. So put it on there, that, and now I'm going to duplicate the shoe layer, duplicate selected layer, and I'm going to call this shoe dot L, and I'm going to bring it below these layers right here. Okay, now the tricky thing is that I'm going to have to move these layers over to the right hand side, and when I do this, the pivot points may be altered. Okay, so keep that in mind. When you're moving layers that you duplicate, the pivot point, there is a possibility that the pivot point will be altered. Select them one by one, and I'm just going to move them over. So select that, and I'm just going to move it over to about here. Okay, let me move all of my layers above the sketch layer so I can see. And now for the lower leg, I'm going to select and move it over. And for the shoe, I'm going to select that as well and move it over. Now, because we just duplicated this leg, we'll of course have to flip it to the opposite side. So I'm going to, with the shoe selected, I'm going to go to my tools properties and select the flip horizontal tool, and I'm going to do the same with the lower leg and the upper leg, and they moved, so I'm just going to move them back into place like so. And for the shoe, I'm going to move it back into place. Well, it's already in a good location, so I'm just going to leave it there. Okay, and keep in mind that remember when I said that when you move duplicated joints, the pivot points may move as well. So let's go ahead and check. So shoe left. Okay, notice for the left shoe, the pivot point is still on the right shoe. So I'm going to place it right there. And for the lower left leg, I'm going to place it right here. And of course, for the upper leg, I'm going to place it right here. Okay. Right. So there we have our character's leg. Oh, and I forgot that in the rigging map layout, I gave the character a neck. So I'm just going to create another layer real quick, drawing, call this neck, place it underneath the head. For some reason it won't allow me to move up, but don't worry about that right now. And I'm just going to create a neck using a rectangle shape like so, and I'm going to place the pivot point right here, because it will rotate around this angle. Okay, so now that we have the character's neck, let's go ahead and create his arm. So I'm just going to create a new layer, call this upper arm dot R for the right side, and I'm going to try and place this above the sketch again. And again, for some reason it won't move physically in the layers panel, but it's actually above the character sketch, so I won't worry too much about that. Polyline, so I'm going to use the polyline tool, And I'm just going to draw the upper part of the character's arm, like so. And I'm going to create a new layer again, call this lower arm dot R, and create the lower part of the arm, like so. Let me move that layer above the character sketch so we are able to see. Okay, and one final layer for the hand. So hand.r, and let me move this above and draw the arm. Okay, I'm just going to use a brush tool to draw the arm. Let me lower my brush size, for demonstration purposes. And 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, 4, like so. Okay, it's not perfect, but I'm going to leave it like that. And now it's time to set my pivot points. So I'm going to set my pivot point for the and somewhere around here, and for the upper arm I'm going to set it somewhere around here. For the lower arm I'm going to set it here between the two joints, and I already set up the arm. Okay, all right, so we have our arm, and of course, again, just as we did with the leg, I'm going to duplicate these. So the upper arm, duplicate, and I'm going to change this to upper arm dot L and move it down. Then lower arm, duplicate selected, and I'm just going to rename this to lower arm dot L. And the hand, I'm going to duplicate that and rename it and dot L. Okay, so now we have our upper arm dot L, our lower arm dot L, and we have the hand. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn off the sketch layer because it seems it's acting a bit weird. So just going to click that so we're able to see everything clearly. Okay, so I'm just going to move my left hand across. So let me move the hand first. So I select the hand layer, click on the select tool, select the arm, the hand, and just move it over. And then I'm going to flip, then do the same for the lower part of the arm, move it over, flip, and just line it up with the hand, around so. And then the upper arm, I'm going to move this as well, over and flip and move back to about there. Okay, and the next thing that we'll do is, of course, check on the pivot points. So I'm going to click on this, and okay, it's not there. It's not where it should be, but you know what? Let me go and move these parts a bit closer to the body before we actually alter the pivot points. So move this and move the hand over. Okay, and now we'll go to changing the pivot point. So for the hand, I'm going to put it here. For the lower arm, I'm going to put it here. And for the upper arm, I'm going to put it here. Okay, so there we have all our pivot points set up. Now comes the difficult part, which is the adding enough pegs and connecting all of those layers together to create one unified rig. So I'm going to go over into my network view, and we touched on this in the previous video. So here we have our new layers. Okay, so if you run into any issues like this, where you see a layer is not connected to the composite, just select the bottom square, which is the blue square, like right here, and drag a connection into the actual composite. So let me just position those real quick. So let me just drag these over here, so they're out of the way of the head layer. As a matter of fact, let's organize the head. So I'm just going to select all the layers on the head. So these are all the layers as we can see from here, and I'm going to group them. So if I right click and click on group, and then choose group selection, and notice there's also a shortcut key, which is Control G. If I click on that, it groups them, and now I have more room to work with. Okay, so, and notice it says group. You can actually rename that. So if I click on the properties button, which is this yellow square right here, I can change the name to, well, head close. Okay, I'm just going to come back over here into my layers and organize them. So now it's time to once again add pegs to each of these joints. And there's another way to add pegs to drawing layers. So if I click on this layer and click on Control P, it creates a peg for that layer. If I should actually select all of these and press Control Shift and P, it creates, well, separate pegs for each layer. Let's group these up and connect them all up. So I'm going to start with the left leg. So here we have the left shoe. I'm going to look for the left shoe, which is here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to maximize this screen right here and then organize these layers, because the layers are labeled so we know what belongs to what. Okay, so if I should click in this space right here, left click in this space and press Control F once and then press Control F another time, it expands the network view or the node view. Okay, so now I'm able to better organize my layers. So now it's time to connect. So what I'm going to do is, let's think about this logically. So if I should press Control F and I'm able to see my drawings now, if we should think about this logically, we know that the foot connects to the lower part of the leg and the lower part of the leg connects to the foot, right? Now the lower part of the leg can't move without the foot moving, right? And these two right here cannot move without the upper part of the leg moving. So with that in mind, that's exactly how we will go about connecting these. So if I should go right here, I can connect the shoe to the lower leg. So the lower leg would control the boat itself and the shoe, and I'm going to connect the lower leg to the upper leg, and the upper leg would control them both. So that, thinking about it logically, that's how you go about connecting them. And of course, The pegs again have their own, as I explained in a previous video, the pegs have their own pivot points. And to quickly copy the pivot point from the drawing, we would just go to the properties and select apply embedded pivot on parent peg to apply the pivot point directly to the peg. So let me just do this for this one as well. Apply pivot point, and we have those pivots. So that way we will be able to move it like so. And keep in mind that when we're rigging, we use the pegs. Well, when we want to animate, we'll be using the pegs. So that's the reason why we're creating the pegs. So, you know, to connect to the drawings, so we are able to animate at the end of the day. So keep that in mind again. So let's move on. So that's one leg down. Okay, so the pivot point for this, let me just copy it. And that's all set. Let me go to the left leg, which is somewhere over here, and do the same connection that I did with the right leg. And of course, copy the pivot points like so. And that is copied, and then we can check. Okay, so those are all copied. The next step is, well, the next thing that I'll be connecting is the arms. So it's the same process as the legs. So hand to lower arm and lower arm to upper arm. And of course, remember to copy the pivot points by going into the properties and changing the join pivot to apply embedded pivot onto parent peg. And then we do our checks to see if they were actually copied correctly. And yes, they were. And onto the right hand, connect, click, drag, connect, and copy pivot points, copy pivot points, and do our checks. And as we can see, they are all connected. Okay, so that's it for the arms and the legs. Now it's time to connect the body. So let me go and find the body. Let me just move this up right here. Okay, so I want the lower part of the body to control both the upper part and itself. And I also want the upper part of the body to move independently. So let's think about this for a second. So I'm going to try connecting the upper part of the body to the lower part of the body, because remember, as I said, we want the lower part to control the entire body, and we still have the upper part of the body. We're still able to select that and move it independently. So I believe that will work. Okay, so I will leave it as is, and remember to copy the pivot points so they are applied to the peg, and I'll do this one as well, and that's looking good. The neck, I'm going to apply the pivot points as well. The neck would be connected to either the body or the head. Now I'm thinking it would make more sense to connect the neck to the head, right? Because they work together. So I'm just going to move the neck over here and move the head all the way up here. And I'm just going to ungroup this because I want to see all of my layers and pegs inside the head. So I'm just going to right click on group and ungroup. Okay, and that's looking better. And let me just move these up, and now I can bring these across, bring them a bit closer. And keep in mind, you can also go press Ctrl F twice to enlarge the view, so you're able to see what you're doing. Okay, so as I said before, let me switch back so we can have a visual cue of what we're doing on the character itself. Yeah, so what we're doing is I'm going to connect the neck to the head, and I don't think I want the neck to be moving by itself at any given point. So with that in mind, I will connect the head to the neck like so, and have the neck be the parent of the head, so it would be in control of the head. And the reason why I did that is because I also want the neck, the head, sorry, to move independently. And if I connected the neck to the head like so, the head would be the parent of the neck. So each time I move the head, the neck would move as well, and I don't want that. So because I want that independence, I would connect the head to the neck and have the neck be in control of the head. Okay, so we have the neck here, we have our head, right, all looking really good, and we have all our arms and our legs and the body. So now it's time to figure out how to go ahead and connect all of these together. So in real life, on a human being, the entire upper part of the body is able to move, is able to rotate around the leg, right? So what I'll do is I will connect the arms to the body, because I mean the body can't move without the arms, right? So let me just expand this view and find the body. Where is the body? So okay, here it is. No, that's the leg. Okay, right here. So I'm just going to connect the arms to the body like so. Let me check that. Okay, so they're all connected to the body, and I'm going to connect the body to the neck, because remember, the neck is in control of the entire head. Okay, so I wouldn't be connecting it to the head layer itself. So let me expand this, and lower body, neck, let me bring this up. I'm just going to click and drag and have the neck be in control of the lower body, and the only thing that's left is the leg. So let me just re-evaluate this rig. So here we have the entire upper part of the body rigged, but I want the leg to also be connected. So let's go back into the node view. I'll connect the legs to the lower body, which would make more sense, right? Because the legs would definitely be connected to the lower part of the body, and they're also able to move independently like so. Okay, so we have all of our pegs connected to each other, and we have the neck being the master peg of all of these pegs. Now what I would do is, to make this make a bit more sense, I would just go and rename this master. You don't have to, but to me it makes more sense, so that I'll know that this controls all of my pegs, right? And with the master, I'm just going to move the pivot point. And instead of using the pivot point tool, when I'm changing the pivot point for a peg manually, you will have to use one of the advanced animation tools. So to find those tools, simply click on Windows and scroll down, click on Toolbars and go over to Advanced Animation, right? And here we can see the tools over here. Usually they would show up somewhere in the bar right here, but for some reason they showed up over here. So I'm just going to click on the first tool, which is the translate tool, and I'm just going to move. And notice again the pivot point looks different from the blue one that we know. So I'm just going to move this all the way down to the base of the character. Okay. And that's because when I am ready to animate, it would rotate from that point. So here we have a full rig. The way we went ahead and rigged this particular character enables us to use a set of specific shortcut keys. So let me just demonstrate that. If I should click on the right leg, and press the B key, that's the B as in boy on the keyboard, and I press the B key again, it moves up the hierarchy. So if I keep pressing B, it just continues to move up. And if I hold down Shift and B, it moves down. So that's a pretty neat little shortcut that you can use whenever you're animating. So yeah, let's go ahead and just test this rig out. So with my animate button on, I'm just going to press F6. I'm just going to extend this. Of course, this is just about rigging. I'm not going to teach you how to animate. This is just for testing purposes to test the rig out. So I'm going to go to frame 10 and I'm going to select my left leg and press B, and B again to move up. Shift B, I went too far. I'm just going to move the leg like so, and Shift B, move this leg. And I think I'm going to rotate the character a bit like so, and select this leg and leave it like so. So there we have our character being animated. Of course, you can animate the arms as well. Right, so our rig is working pretty good actually. Right, and there you have it. We've come to the end of this video. I really hope you learned all about rigging a character. In order to create a universal rig, what we could do is save this rig to the library, and each time you have a new character, all you would need to do is just drag and drop this character from the library and just alter the way it looks. Okay, so essentially that would be a universal rig. And to do this, you would click on the master that is grouped, and I would go to the library, which is here. If you don't see the menu for it there, click on Windows and click Library. Okay, and in the library I'm going to store this rig so that we can reuse reuse it. New folder. Okay, now it's created. And let me name this rig guy. And then I'll just left click and drag into this folder and release and click OK. So our rig gets stored in the library. So if I should exit Toon Boom and open it again, anytime I open it, I can always find the rig inside of the library. Okay, so it will always be there unless you delete it. And if I should delete my character right here, I can always left click and drag the character from the library onto my stage and then begin animating. So that's pretty much it. Let's review. So we just covered planning for 2D rigging, rigging a character's head, and creating a full body rig. Let's see if we're both on the same page. Here are some questions. What is the process for importing a sketch into Toon Boom? What are 2 things to consider before rigging begins? What is a rigging map? What is parenting as it relates to rigging? What is a peg used for in Toon Boom? How can a group of drawings on different layers be moved together? How do you enter the network view? What is the purpose of using different layers for each part of the character? And lastly, how is one peg linked to another? Thanks for watching this short video on creating an advanced 2D character rig in Toon Boom. I hope you learned how to break apart a character sketch and combining them using pegs.